The moment I stepped into the ballroom at Ever, I knew something was off. Not in the grand way that screams at you, but in the quiet, creeping kind that makes your shoulders tighten without realizing. Everything was picture perfect. White linen tablecloths, flickering candles dancing against crystal glasses, polished silverware laid out like we were about to dine with royalty. And maybe we were, depending on who you asked in my family. I scanned the room slowly, following the line of name cards arranged in careful symmetry. I kept walking. My name wasn't there. I blinked, took a step back. Nothing. "Can I help you find your seat, ma'am?" A young man in a black vest asked politely. I gave a tight smile. "Yes, actually, Tempest Boyd." He looked down at his clipboard, then smiled again. "Just a little awkward now." "Ah, yes. You're at table 8, right over here." He gestured toward the back. Not just the back, the one by the kitchen. Table 8 was where late RSVPs, +1s, and overflow guests went. I wasn't a +1. I paid for the deposit, arranged the menu, picked the wines. My name was on the financials, just not on the guest list. My classmates waved from across the room. One of them raised a brow. "You're not sitting with the family?" "Prefer the breeze from the kitchen," I said, smile still in place. No one questioned it. That's the thing about polite society. No one ever really asks. I sat down quietly, my back to the dance floor. It was just a mix-up. Had to be. At the center of the room, under a crown of soft lighting and a dangling chandelier, was a circular table so overflowing with roses it looked like someone had proposed. Gold-rimmed name cards glinted in the candlelight. I could read them from across the room. Callista Viles. Dr. Callista Viles. And next to it, in script that looked suspiciously like my mother's handwriting, Amaryllis Kane. I didn't see my own name. Not even a scribble. I stood up again and walked toward the main table, trying not to feel like I was chasing something I should have already had. I glanced discreetly around the table, as if I were a curious guest rather than the woman who paid the bill. Nothing. Then I saw it. On a collapsible chair at the far edge, barely tucked under the white draped table, a piece of masking tape with T. Boyd written in blue pen. My name, my seat. It wasn't meant to be seen. A server passed by and I stopped him. "Excuse me, did someone change the seating chart last minute?" He hesitated. "I'm not sure, ma'am. We were told to follow the layout emailed yesterday morning. Is there an issue?" I shook my head. "No. Thank you." As he walked away, I inhaled through my nose, slow, measured. My graduation, my money, my absence. The whispers started before dessert. A woman with a pearl brooch leaned over to me with a wide smile. "You must be so proud of Callista." "What an accomplishment!" I gave her a polite nod. "She's really something," the woman continued. "They did a beautiful job celebrating her tonight. The whole family must be thrilled." She handed me an invitation. "Isn't this the loveliest keepsake?" I took it and scanned the foil lettering, celebrating the achievements of Dr. Callista Viles and the Kane family. That was it. No mention of me. No "congratulations, Tempest." No hint that this evening had anything to do with my MBA, the 2 years of sleepless nights, debt, burnout, and relentless climbing. Just Callista. I held the card, my thumb grazing the edge. I remembered the moment my mother insisted, "Let me handle the invitations. One less thing on your plate, sweetheart." And like that, I understood. It wasn't a mistake. It never was. Even on the day I built, I whispered to myself, I was invisible. Callista swept over in a flurry of perfume and pearls. "You look amazing, sis." "That dress, it's so you." I studied her, this perfect image of achievement and grace. I didn't see my name on the invite. Her expression didn't flinch, not even a twitch. "Oh, you know how Mom is. PR matters." A long silence passed between us. She smoothed the fabric on her hip. "You okay?" I nodded, swallowed the words I wanted to throw. "Of course." She smiled like we were still children playing house. "Enjoy the night, okay?" She walked away before I could respond. "PR matters more than people," I muttered. At my seat, my real one by the kitchen, I stared at the name card taped to plastic. I forced myself not to touch it, not to move it, not to scratch it off like an old scab. The laughter behind me swelled. Someone clinked a glass. Callista posed for pictures with professors I once cried in front of during finals. My stomach tightened. I bankrolled this evening. Literally. Every round of appetizers, every pour of wine, every soft jazz playlist. Me. I remembered sending money home to help Mom get through that bad tax year, then seeing Callista post about a photography retreat in Napa. I remembered sitting through quarterly reviews with puffy eyes while she got headshots taken for her med school blog. I remembered every rent payment I covered while she figured things out. I had no medals, no stage, no bouquet, just a table next to swinging kitchen doors and a name written in ink that could be wiped off. The worst part of being erased, I murmured, is watching them celebrate your absence. A note formed in my mind like a ledger entry. Sharp. Permanent. Remember this moment. A voice rose above the chatter. A toast! I turned my head. A family friend, one of those who always smelled faintly of lavender and control, stood with her flute raised high. To Callista, she said brightly, the true light of this family. Applause erupted. I didn't clap. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over the camera icon. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about protecting the part of me they hadn't gotten to yet. The clatter of silverware against porcelain was the only sound filling the silence at my table. I sat with my back to the celebration, watching waitstaff weave between tables like practiced dancers. A few feet away, the kitchen doors swung open and shut with a steady rhythm, like a metronome marking my exclusion. Then came the voice, loud, cheerful, polished. To Dr. Callista Viles. A family friend toasted from the main table, holding up her flute like it was a torch passed to the chosen one. You've made us all proud! Applause burst instantly, rippling across the room like a wave I was never meant to ride. A few people even stood, smiling as they looked toward the glowing centerpiece that was Callista. No one turned toward me. No one asked, "Wait, wasn't this Tempest's graduation?" I caught Callista's eyes briefly. She smiled, modest and camera-ready, then turned to hug our mother, who clutched her arm like they were the queen and her heir. I leaned forward, my voice barely audible. It's my graduation. No one heard me, or worse, they heard and decided not to acknowledge it. I didn't expect a parade, but I didn't expect to disappear either. I barely had time to sit back down before a waiter approached with a sleek black box resting on a tray lined in velvet. He paused at the main table. Amaryllis stood, the room quieted, cameras rose. This was choreographed, practiced, performed. She took the microphone from the bandstand like she'd done this before. Tonight, she began, voice honeyed and loud, I want to take a moment to honor the daughter who has carried our name, our legacy, into medicine, who has reminded this family what excellence looks like. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. She opened the box with a practiced flourish. Inside, a gold Rolex, engraved. Gasps, clapping. Even a few whoops from our cousins. Callista stood and covered her mouth like it was a surprise. It wasn't. She knew. Her tears came right on cue. They hugged. Amaryllis kissed her cheek like a politician sealing a campaign promise. I sat still, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I stared at the center of that room like it was a scene from a play I'd paid to watch. Then Amaryllis turned toward me. Still holding the box, she walked over, smiling as if I were her assistant at a gala. Can you hold this, dear? She asked softly, pressing the weight of it into my hands. I didn't flinch. I looked down at the metal watch resting in its satin bed. I've held this family's pride longer than I've held my own. This box, lighter than that. The lights dimmed. The projector flickered to life. Soft music played, violin and piano, something sentimental enough to cue tears, but neutral enough to not distract from the legacy. The screen lit up with gold text, The Journey of Excellence, a tribute to our daughters. Plural. The first slide, Callista as a baby, then toddler, then in a white coat holding a stethoscope that was clearly too big for her. Laughter. Oz, then Callista in high school, prom queen, valedictorian, mission trips, college accolades, med school awards, intern of the year. Each photo transitioned smoothly, fading one into the next like a love letter to her greatness. Then it happened. One single photo, blurry, underexposed of me. I was maybe 19, standing next to a dorm window, half smiling, and then gone. Just like that. The rest of the video returned to Callista's achievements, her lab coat, her name on conference brochures. A headline, Dr. Callista Viles to join resident program in cardiology. Final screen, celebrating Dr. Callista Viles. No mention of Booth, no mention of my name, no MBA, no Tempest. The room applauded again. Wow, someone whispered behind me. So it's her party then? I stood quietly, walked out of the ballroom. My shoes didn't echo. I made sure of that. I needed air, even if it came from the hallway vent. The hallway was cooler, less crowded, less decorated, just walls and a table holding unused brochures. I pulled out my phone. A voice message waited from Elliot. You sure you're okay in there? I recorded a response. I'm compiling evidence. This isn't grief, it's documentation. I wasn't crying, not even shaking. I opened my email, searched for the chain I'd sent to the event coordinator 3 weeks ago, found the link to the video I created, the one showing my late-night studying, the part-time jobs. The moment I opened the Booth acceptance letter, the status said, opened, not downloaded, deliberate. I scrolled up to Amaryllis's reply. We'll review and make adjustments for time. They didn't just forget me, they erased me, surgically, strategically, and now I was alone in a hallway holding the evidence. I took a deep breath, walked back into the ballroom with shoulders square. The band was playing now. Soft jazz, timeless and harmless. Callista caught my eye and made her way over. Hey, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Everything okay? I stared at her. You saw the video. She blinked. Yeah, it was beautiful, wasn't it? My name wasn't in it. She tilted her head like a dog trying to understand a new command. You think people notice that stuff? I didn't answer. She leaned in with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. You'll still get your moment, she said sweetly. Just maybe not tonight. I returned the smile, softer, slower, quieter. I'll take my moment, I said. You won't see it coming. I walked back to my table, took out my phone, opened the camera, but this time I didn't aim it at the stage. I turned it around, facing me, recording not the room, but the reckoning. I stood near the glass wall of the hallway, away from the clatter of forks and forced laughs. The city twinkled beyond the windows, each light a reminder of how far I'd come, and how little it seemed to matter in that room. Inside, Callista laughed loudly, surrounded by guests in suits and sequins, heads tilted toward her as if she were gravity. They see her as the sun, I whispered to no one, and I'm the shadow in every family photo. I scrolled through the photos on my phone, flipping back years at a time. In nearly every one, I was blurred out, cropped, or hidden behind someone's shoulder. No one ever said, Tempest, scoot to the center. I remembered standing at the edges of every group shot, physically there, emotionally omitted. In one picture, I saw myself at age 12, holding a second-place science trophy. My mother had framed the photo, but only because Callista had been standing next to me, grinning with her first-place ribbon. If they erased me now, it wouldn't be the first time, but something about tonight made the erasure feel final, strategic. Like it had graduated, too. A clink of silverware pulled me back. I turned just in time to catch Uncle Roy holding court at a side table, red-faced and waving a glass around. Still can't believe you turned out okay, Tempest, he slurred. You were a surprise, right? People chuckled nervously. No one corrected him. I waited for my mother to interject, to say, we were thrilled when she came along. But she didn't. Instead, she raised her champagne and said, surprises can be blessings. Eventually, like I was a disease they learned to manage, not a daughter they chose. I stood motionless, but my chest tightened. Not in heartbreak, but in something colder, more precise. Tolerance is not the same as love, and I had lived my whole life mistaking one for the other. Back at my table, I sat without touching my food. My stomach was too twisted for salmon mousse. That's when I saw him. Ryan. He stood beside Callista near the drinks table, his hand grazing the small of her back. They clinked glasses and laughed like it was a private joke from years ago. My breath hitched, not because I still missed him, I didn't, but because I remembered exactly how he left. He ghosted me after my graduation. No call, no email, not even a breakup text. And now, there he was. With her. A woman beside me leaned in. Aren't they adorable together? The doctor and the philanthropist. My mouth dried. I nodded like an actress at a red carpet interview. Polished. Composed. Invisible. Later, as I passed by the bar on my way to the restroom, Callista caught my arm. "Oh, you remember Ryan, right?" she asked, eyes wide with faux innocence. "He's helping me with our medical outreach now. Small world." "Very small," I replied. My voice didn't shake, my face didn't flinch, but my mind screamed. Years ago, he told me during one of our late-night walks, "Your family feels impossible." And he was right. But instead of stepping away from the madness, he chose the simpler path. He chose the easier sister. Inside my chest, a switch flipped. I wasn't crying. I wasn't jealous. I was awake. Back at the table, I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I typed a title in all caps. Family Rewrite, List of Erasures. Underneath, I started bulleting entries. Not just money I'd sent, not just holidays I'd missed, but moments. 5th grade spelling bee. Callista's photo posted. Mine, not mentioned. Senior year internship. I paid for my own train pass. Callista's summer program was fully covered. Thanksgiving. 2016. I set the table. Callista gave the toast. Dad's funeral. She spoke. I wasn't asked. It was more than memory. It was pattern. A deliberate retelling where my part got smaller every year. I read an article once that said, "Silence doesn't mean peace. It means the person stopped hoping you'd listen." I stopped hoping a long time ago. Now I was collecting, documenting, preparing. The applause swelled again, loud and hollow. I didn't look up at first, but I heard it, someone's voice cutting through the noise. "Where's the real graduate?" The room hushed a little, not entirely, but enough that heads turned. I stood, walked toward the center table, not fast, not slow. I picked up my glass, met my mother's gaze, and lifted it gently. I didn't plan to speak, but the words came, and they didn't sound like mine. They sounded like someone done pretending. I didn't sit back down right away. I stood at the edge of the ballroom, holding my glass like it was the only anchor keeping me grounded in that place. The laughter inside grew louder, fuller, as more guests poured in, hugging Callista like she had just cured cancer. Someone dropped her name with doctor in every sentence, as if it was now her first name. No one approached me, not a glance, not a nod, not even a polite, "How's everything?" My phone buzzed. A notification banner slid across the screen. It was from the restaurant's billing system. I tapped it out of habit. My eyes moved quickly over the invoice. $12,000. Billed to Mrs. Amaryllis Kane. Hosted by Dr. Callista Viles. My card, their names. My achievement. Their show. I scrolled up. The breakdown of costs, appetizers, wine pairings, flower arrangements, AV setup, everything had my approval. I remembered being meticulous, sending changes in bullet points, confirming allergies, even insisting they double-check if Cousin Claire was still vegan this month. And now, on paper, it looked like they had planned the entire thing for Callista. From their wallets, from their hearts, I had to sit. I sank back into the chair at the kitchen table, the one that wobbled slightly to the left. As the servers refilled water glasses and cleared salad plates, I pulled up the email chain from weeks ago. My subject line, final confirmation, graduation dinner. There it was, my exact wording. Please ensure the evening celebrates both daughters equally. Back then, I thought that line was protective. Generous, even. Now it just looked pathetic. I flipped open the guest book. A framed gold placard stood on the welcome table. A celebration of Dr. Callista Viles, sponsored by the Viles Kane family. Not Callista and Tempest, Not our daughters. Just her. I walked over to the event coordinator, a young guy with hair too neat to be accidental. Hi, I said, keeping my voice even. Can I ask, were there last-minute changes to the signage or seating? He smiled. Oh, yes. Your mother made some final updates on the phone a few days ago. She wanted to centralize the message, said it'd be cleaner. Did she forward that to me? He paused. No. I assumed you two were on the same page. I see, I said, tight-lipped. Can you email me those updates? Of course. I'll do that after the event. Perfect. Thank you. I turned and walked away, every step firm, deliberate. It wasn't just erasure, it was branding theft. The screen above the dance floor flickered again. A new segment of the video presentation began. The title appeared in cursive font, Behind the Journey. I straightened. This was supposed to be my contribution. I had spent hours stitching it together, clips from undergrad, late nights in the office, footage of me standing in front of a whiteboard during my internship, pitching strategy, quiet victories, steady climb. The screen stayed black for 3 beats, then a new montage played, Callista's baby photos again. More shots from her residency, her at a gala with Mom, her giving a talk at a Women in Medicine brunch. Soft music. Light fades. It ended with a quote on the screen. Excellence begins with family. The lights returned. Polite applause. I didn't move, not even to blink. The host, some generic MC hired for the night, stepped to the mic. Apologies, we had a technical issue rendering one of the files. We had to trim some content for time. Thank you for your understanding. I stood up, calm, controlled. I walked to the AV booth, a small table in the back corner hidden behind a floral display. 2 people sat behind the laptop. Excuse me, I said. A girl with blunt bangs looked up. Hi, can I help you? I sent in a video segment titled Tempest's Journey. It was confirmed. Why wasn't it played? She blinked. Oh, that file was marked as outdated. We were told to use the updated version. Who gave you that instruction? She looked at the clipboard beside her. Says, Client Request, Amaryllis Kane. I nodded. Thank you. She smiled awkwardly, already turning back to the screen. Outside, the air was cooler, a welcome contrast to the warmth inside that ballroom, which now felt like a furnace of pretension. I stood near the valet station, ignoring the cold against my bare shoulders. I opened my inbox, found the confirmation email, screenshot, saved, then the invoice, another screenshot, saved, then I opened a new note. Title: Documentation Phase, Duplicity Archive. Underneath, I started bulleting. Invoice shows $12,000 paid from my card. Guest book lists hosted by Callista. Clip marked as outdated despite confirmation. AV override initiated by Amaryllis Kane. Email thread proof. Intention for dual recognition. I paused. You don't win by yelling, I whispered. You win by collecting. For years I'd been told, don't make a scene. That phrase was practically a lullaby in my family. But this wasn't a scene. This was a story. And I was finally ready to tell it. Another email pinged. I opened it. Subject: Client Video Revision Confirmation. Body: Your revised file was overwritten per on-site client request. Amaryllis Kane. My lips curled, not in amusement but in clarity. They didn't slip up. They executed a plan. I walked back inside with my phone still in hand. I returned to my table quietly, not defeated, just quieter than before, the kind of quiet that doesn't announce itself, but settles in with purpose. The lights dimmed again for another speech. This time, a professor from Callista's med school was called up to speak. I watched as the spotlight hit our table, the one I paid for, and swept right past me. I glanced at my phone to keep my hands busy. A notification flashed. I'd been tagged in a post. I tapped it open. Group photo. 15 people, all booth grads. Caption: Proud to be part of Callista's big night. I blinked. My thumb hovered over the screen. My night? My graduation. I zoomed into the image. There I was, in the corner, half-turned, mid-blink, blurred. I wasn't even cropped properly. I scrolled down to the comments. A chorus of applause emojis, hearts, and well-deserved praise reigned under the post. People I studied with, pulled all-nighters with, were now complimenting Callista, who had never set foot in booth. One comment stood out. Wait, wasn't this Tempest's graduation? And then, poof, it was gone. Deleted. I stared at the screen, the pressure in my chest growing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a rewrite. Intentional. Systematic. I took a screenshot, saved it to the same folder I had started earlier. I'd labeled it Duplicity Archive. It wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. Minutes passed. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Professor Halverson. Strange you didn't accept the post-grad fellowship. We really believed in your work. I stared at the message, confused. I hadn't rejected anything. I opened my email. Searched for the fellowship name. Nothing. Not even in spam. Then it hit me. Mom had access to my physical mail at the old house. She still had the key to the P.O. box I used before moving to the city. I closed my eyes. As she wouldn't. But she would. She had. I searched for any forwarded messages. Nothing. But then I found a draft I'd once started, an unsent reply to that same professor. I'd saved it, meaning to send it later, but never had. It began with, "Thank you so much for considering me." That was all I needed to remember. They hadn't just taken the spotlight, they'd blocked paths. I wrote a new email to the fellowship chair. "Hi, I recently learned an opportunity may have been declined on my behalf. Could you confirm who responded and when?" I reread it twice before hitting send. Then I opened Instagram and drafted a post, text only, black background, white letters. A reminder, protect your access to your own future. No tags, no names, but people would know. I stood up from the table, walked toward the back patio. I needed air that wasn't piped through vents and coated with curated lies. Outside, I paced slowly near the fountain. The music from the ballroom pulsed faintly behind me. Then I heard heels clicking across the stone tiles. Callista. She walked up, drink in hand, eyes soft, too soft. "You okay?" she asked. "Define okay," I replied. She smiled. "You know how this family works, right? It's better to let Mom take the reins." "That's the problem. She never lets go." Callista took a sip of her cocktail. "Look, you're still here. The night's going beautifully. I don't see the harm." "You don't see it because you're not meant to." She tilted her head. "Are you really going to ruin all this over pride?" "No," I said, tone firm. "Over principle." She blinked. I didn't ask her to reject anything. I didn't ask for my own name to be erased either. We stood in silence. I saw her processing. Not guilt, just calculation. I added, "I'm taking my reins back, and I'm not asking for permission." She looked away. "You always make things harder than they need to be." "No. I just don't make them fake." I turned and left her there, walking straight into the ballroom again, not to stay, but to collect what was mine. My phone buzzed. New email. Subject, fellowship confirmation. Follow-up on rejection. I opened it mid-stride. Text, declined by Amaryllis Kane, as legal contact on file. I stopped walking, but I didn't stop breathing. My hand didn't shake. I closed the email and slipped the phone into my clutch. They thought they'd stolen my opportunity, but what they really did was show me exactly where to draw the line. Callista's voice was dripping with gratitude, timed to perfection. "I couldn't have done this without my family," she said, her hand touching her chest like she was accepting an Oscar. "You've all supported me, believed in me, more than I could ever say." The applause roared, echoing off the ballroom's gold leaf ceiling. I watched from my wobbling chair by the kitchen, fingers loosely wrapped around my wine glass. I'd stopped sipping 2 speeches ago. Amaryllis stood, no microphone needed. Her voice cut through the clapping like a knife through frosting. "I think it's time for one last toast." Even the band stopped mid-note. I didn't turn around. A colleague beside me leaned in. "Aren't you the one graduating?" I nodded, eyes still locked on the center of the room. She blinked, confused. Then why is this? I didn't answer. Amaryllis was already speaking. Tonight is a proud night, not just for Callista, but for us, for what we've built, for the legacy we continue. She raised her glass, slow and high. And while some of us shine brighter than others, we all know who carries the weight, who brings honor to this family. There was a pause. Aunt Lorna, 3 seats away, suddenly piped up with that fake polite energy she saved for funerals and awkward birthday parties. Tempest, dear, we're so proud of your return to school. That takes courage. Amaryllis didn't miss a beat. Courage, she repeated, with a laugh that wasn't quite light. She's been nothing but an ungrateful distraction. A ripple moved across the room. I turned my head slowly. The kind of slow you reserve for car wrecks. You already know the damage is there, but your brain insists on looking. Amaryllis met my gaze, calm, cold. We've given you everything, she said, loud enough for every table to hear. And you've returned nothing but bitterness. She looked at me like I was a stain she hadn't gotten out in the first wash. Honestly, she said, still smiling, we wish you were never born. No one breathed. Even Callista didn't move. A fork dropped on the far side of the room. A gasp caught mid-throat. Somewhere, someone whispered, "Did she just—" I blinked once. She didn't scream. She didn't slip. She meant it. That wasn't anger. That was truth. The kind of truth someone stores for years, polishing it like silver, waiting for the perfect dinner party to unveil it. I set my glass down. Not a clink. Just a gentle touch of glass against linen. I reached for my spoon, tapped it gently against the rim. Once, twice. People turned. Silence descended like a fog. I stood slowly. No rush. No drama. I smiled. A real one. Not wide. Just wide enough. Thank you, I said softly. That was the clearest thing anyone's ever said to me. Amaryllis's face stayed frozen, the edges of her mouth still bent in that hostess smirk. I looked around the room, not to make a point, just to see. No one met my eyes. I nodded once. Then I walked out. Not fast, not storming. I walked like I'd rehearsed it. Heel click, heel click, heel click. Each step louder than the last. At the coat check, I didn't wait for the attendant. I reached over, grabbed my wrap, and stepped into the night air. It was misting, cold, wet air that clung to your skin like memory. I crossed the sidewalk and leaned against the black iron railing across from the restaurant. My breath came steady. Controlled. Some people are born into love. Some are born into roles. I was the second. I pulled out my phone, deleted the group family chat, unsubscribed from the shared photo album, removed access to the Google Calendar that still had my name on 3 weekly errands labeled Tempest errands. One tap at a time, each one quieter than applause, but heavier than any toast. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Unknown number. I was there. I saw what she did. You're not crazy. BS. I stared at the message. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew that initial. I typed, "Who are you?" The message that came next. It wasn't from a stranger. I hadn't changed out of the dress. I couldn't bring myself to unzip it. Still seated on the edge of my bed, I scrolled through my inbox, my heels tossed somewhere near the hallway, the straps hanging like tired wrists. The anonymous message from BS was still pinned at the top, blinking like a dare. And then a new message slid in. Subject: They've done this before. I opened it without hesitation. There was an attachment, PowerPoint file. The title: Capstone Presentation, Final TPTX. I clicked. The first slide was mine, fonts and all. The cover page hadn't changed. But the second slide, the formula that got me laughed off the stage during my final presentation, was wrong. I knew it the moment I saw it. I had checked that formula 5 times the night before. I'd even run the numbers on a whiteboard, standing barefoot in my kitchen like a crazy person. The version on this file? Deliberately incorrect. A missing variable, an unbalanced equation, and it had my name on it. My stomach dropped. I kept scrolling. Slide after slide, slight tweaks. Font color changed here, a data point omitted there. Minor shifts, but enough to make me look sloppy. I checked the document's metadata, uploaded from an IP address registered to the house in Evanston, my mother's house. Of course, they didn't want me to shine. They wanted me humiliated. Silently, professionally. This wasn't sabotage for fun. It was performance, me, fumbling on stage in front of recruiters and mentors, while they smiled politely and said, "At least she tried." And I had tried. The presentation had been the final requirement before graduation. My mentor, Professor Halverson, looked disappointed that day. He didn't say much, just patted my shoulder and nodded. Now I understood why his smile felt rehearsed. Another email pinged in, a second screenshot. This time it was worse. It was an email thread, forwarded by someone with a conscience, apparently, the original sender. Tempest Boyd. At least that's what the from line said. I never wrote it. The message was addressed to a list of my classmates and a few faculty names I recognized instantly. In it, I allegedly apologized for being overly competitive, difficult in group dynamics, and struggling to separate ambition from collaboration. It ended with, "Please don't hold this against our family. No one talks like that, except Amaryllis." I scrolled to the sent timestamp. 3 weeks ago. No wonder Susan from my project team stopped answering my texts. No wonder Halverson didn't recommend me for the consulting cohort. Everyone had been pulling away quietly, and I'd thought it was just my imagination. I clicked Reply All, typed nothing, deleted the draft. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it what it really was. Truth. I uploaded the modified presentation, the email screenshots, the IP address logs. I wasn't panicking. I was compiling. I opened LinkedIn. Started typing. What does it take to erase someone? I stared at it, backspaced it all, typed again. I have evidence of academic interference and identity fraud. Would you prefer this stay within the university or go public? That one I didn't type on LinkedIn. I emailed it directly to the Dean of Academic Affairs. Subject, urgent, confidential. Attachment, everything. I sat back. You don't kill a legacy with noise, I whispered to myself. You kill it with silence, paper, and proof. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the buzz of my phone vibrating again. This time it was a call. I didn't recognize the number until it lit up completely. Callista. I stared at it. Let it ring twice. Then I answered, without a word. There was a long pause. Then her voice, tentative, softer than I'd ever heard it. We need to talk. Not for Mom. For me. I said nothing. Just listened. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure who was actually wearing the mask anymore. 2 days after the dinner, I met Callista at a quiet corner cafe near Lincoln Park. She picked the place, neutral, scenic, forgettable. When she walked in, she looked like someone who hadn't spent the last 48 hours being dragged across social media comment sections. Designer sunglasses, crisp blazer, not a strand of hair out of place. I didn't know Mom went that far, she said before even sitting down. I swear. I stayed silent. I didn't nod, just watched her carefully. She said it was about control, optics. I thought you were fine with it. Callista, I said calmly. Do I look fine? Her hands fluttered around the ceramic cup. She avoided my eyes. You know how she is, she muttered. You could have said something. Saying something hasn't worked since I was 10, I replied. That's why I started documenting. She didn't argue. Just lowered her sunglasses to the bridge of her nose and sighed. I pulled out a folder, laid it flat between us. Event coordinator's receipt, I said. File ID, Tempest Grad Final .mp4, uploaded, confirmed. I flipped to the next page. Final playback .mp4, uploaded 6 hours later, from Amaryllis's email. Her jaw tensed. She didn't tell me she changed it. I took out my phone, showed her the metadata screenshots. Timestamps, file hash comparisons, file paths. This wasn't sabotage, I said. This was deletion. She leaned back in her chair. The sunlight caught the silver in her earrings. She just wanted it to be perfect, she whispered. I didn't laugh, because that was the problem. Perfect in our family meant singular. It meant erasing anything inconvenient, including me. My phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I answered. Hello? Tempest Boyd? Yes. This is Beckett. I was the floor supervisor at the dinner. I paused. Okay. I wasn't going to say anything, he said, voice low, nervous. But what your mother did, it didn't sit right with me. I stood up and stepped away from the table. Go on. She told us, my whole team, not to include your name on anything, he said. She was very clear. Keep the focus on Dr. Callista. It'll avoid awkward moments. Those were her words. I leaned against the cafe wall. The wind picked up, brushing my hair back. She also gave us a new video file, he added. Said the original one had been misaligned with the evening's tone. She said that? Verbatim. And the seating chart? Yeah. That was sent over with instructions to push your table near the kitchen. She said you'd prefer it. I closed my eyes. Would you be willing to give that in writing? I asked. If it stays between you and your lawyer, yes. Send it. I will. Click. I walked back to the table. Callista looked up. Was that who I think it was? Someone who saw through the script, I said. Her shoulders slumped. I didn't ask for this, Temp. No, I said. You just didn't stop it. Back home, I changed out of my clothes, sat at my kitchen counter, opened my laptop. Subject, formal inquiry, event content, manipulation, attached, screenshots, audio, time-stamped edits, CC'd, Amelia Grant, a friend of mine from undergrad, now a litigation attorney. Then I opened LinkedIn, typed, imagine paying for a dinner where your name wasn't on the invitation or the memory. I hit post. Within minutes, notifications blew up. Shares, comments, messages. You just described my wedding. This happened at my retirement party. I thought I was crazy. It was never just me. This happens more than we think. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was unmasking something bigger. Just as I closed my laptop, another notification pinged. Email. From Lauren Masters, human interest columnist, Chicago Times. Subject, your story deserves light. Tempest, we saw your post. Would you be willing to speak? This deserves more than one LinkedIn thread. I read it twice. Then once more. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the first thing I noticed wasn't the light bleeding through the curtains. It was the vibration of my phone, non-stop, pulsing like a second heartbeat on the nightstand. I rolled over and reached for it. Notifications covered the screen. Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit. I unlocked the phone and scrolled. My post had gone viral. Hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of shares, countless comments. I didn't even realize it had been reposted across platforms. A few influencers had stitched their own stories to mine. Some were soft, others blistering. People saw me. But the ones who should have seen me, silent. No missed calls from Amaryllis, no texts from Callista, not even a half-hearted, we need to talk, from any of the cousins who'd posted side-by-side selfies with Callista just 3 nights ago. I opened the comments section. One stuck out. You just described my family. I thought I was alone. Another. They can take your stage, but not your voice. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, let it sink in. Validation from strangers felt more sincere than decades of family dinners. A new message came in. A voice memo from Callista. I hesitated, then hit play. Her voice was breathless, cracked. I didn't mean for any of this, she sobbed. I didn't know Mom declined the fellowship, or that she changed the video, I swear, she sniffled loudly. I thought she was just over-managing, like always. You know how she gets when there's an event. I didn't realize. Temp, I didn't know. She paused. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Now everyone thinks I'm complicit, that I let it happen. I replayed the last sentence. This was the first time I'd ever heard her cry. And it wasn't for me. It was for her image. She didn't sound devastated that I had been erased. She sounded terrified people saw it happen. Regret is not the same as remorse. And Callista? She was mourning the fallout, not the damage. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled back up and texted Maya. Sorry you had to leave the party early. I didn't even see you leave. Her reply came seconds later. I didn't leave. I sat up straight. She continued. I was asked to leave. By your mom. I stared at the screen. Maya. She told one of the staff I didn't fit the visual tone of the evening. My jaw locked. She said I made the photo lineups look unbalanced, told me it was best if I left before the slideshow. My eyes burned. Not with tears, but heat. The quiet kind, the controlled kind. Maya had flown in from Denver, bought a formal dress, missed work. She'd been there for me more consistently than anyone in that family ever had, and they kicked her out like she was an afterthought. They didn't just erase me. They erased my only ally. I flashed back to the empty chair next to mine, the one I kept glancing at between courses. They made sure I had no buffer, no one to make eye contact with when the speech turned ugly, no one to lean toward when the video skipped my name. I'd been isolated by design. A new message pinged, this time from the reporter. Subject, draft attached, the daughter who paid for a party she wasn't invited to. I opened the document. The headline hit like a punch to the ribs. The rest of the article? Brutal, but true, detailed, sourced, documented. They had done their homework, included a timeline, embedded my screenshots, even quoted Beckett's recorded statement. I didn't ask for any edits. It was ready. I sent back a single line. Approved. An hour later, it went live. Then came the fallout. Amaryllis's circle began to shrink. Her friends started unfollowing me on social media. Quietly, without message or warning. The family group chat, silent for days, finally lit up. But not with apologies. You've embarrassed us. You didn't have to make this public. You're ruining Mom's reputation. There it was. They weren't mad it happened. They were mad people saw. I scrolled past each message. Not one said, "We're sorry." Not one asked if it was true. They knew it was. And still, no one acknowledged it. I turned off notifications. A final email came in. Different subject line. Estate review. Tempest Boyd inquiry. I opened it without expectation. Inside was a formal notice from a law firm in Evanston. Her father's original will had been located. Attached to the email was a PDF, scanned, dated, notarized. Her name, bold, unaltered, right there under primary beneficiary. I stared at it in silence. No tears, no smile, just breath. Because finally, my story wasn't over. It was just finally under my name. The kitchen table had never felt more like a war room. My laptop glowed, lighting up my tired face in the dark room. I hadn't turned on the overhead lights. Something about the shadows made it easier to sit with the truth. There it was, my name. Primary beneficiary, Tempest Boyd. Not tucked beneath anyone else's title, not as an afterthought. Bold, centered, sealed. The PDF of my father's original will sat open, notarized and dated 5 months before he passed. My eyes hovered over the digital scan of his signature. Familiar. Sharp. Undeniable. Everything I was denied was never supposed to be withheld. It wasn't just a betrayal from my mother. It was from every system that had quietly nodded while she redrafted the truth. Every notary who never asked a second question. Every relative who assumed I didn't need protecting. This was never an oversight. It was a strategy. I scheduled a call with the attorney listed at the bottom of the email. He picked up on the first ring. Miss Boyd, thank you for returning our message. I appreciate your work, I said. I assume you've confirmed the original document's legitimacy? Without doubt, he replied. The document was found in a safety deposit box under your father's name. The key was turned over during an audit of the estate. I let out a quiet breath. And the revised version? Submitted later, signed under duress, and not by the same notary. It was never properly registered. Can you say that on record? I can, and I already have. We've logged everything. He paused, then added, Ms. Boyd, this may warrant a fraud investigation. You have legal grounds to— No threats, I cut in. Just action. I clicked open another tab, filed for an injunction to freeze any further estate distribution. Callista hadn't even known about this. I didn't know if I'd tell her. This wasn't a moment for sharing. It was a moment for reclaiming. The next morning, I drafted a post. White background, black font. When the truth was buried, my name went with it. I'm digging it back out, paper by paper. I hit post, closed the app, walked into the kitchen and brewed coffee like it was any normal day. Within 2 hours, I was trending again. This time, the comments weren't just sympathy, they were outrage. A local reporter picked up the will story, then another. A legal blog did a breakdown of how estate manipulation happens inside upper-middle-class families. Then the deeper layers started to unravel. Journalists began reviewing Amaryllis's involvement in a number of community boards. It turned out her nonprofit had inconsistencies. One grant application used padded resumes, another cited her daughter's medical credentials as part of the application, without disclosure. She was asked to step down from 2 boards within 48 hours. A third suspended her indefinitely pending investigation. I didn't post anything else. I let the documents speak for themselves. She taught me to play nice. I taught myself to play fair. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the story was carrying itself. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room and opened a notebook I hadn't touched in over a year. I wrote one line across the top. What does freedom look like? For me, it looked like this. Not vengeance, not chaos. Clarity. I picked up the phone and called Amelia, my attorney friend. I'm thinking about a statement, I said. Not explosive, just exact. You have my full support, she said. Draft it. I'll review it before it hits inboxes. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Silence didn't keep the peace. It only prolonged the injustice. I wasn't looking to destroy my mother. I was looking to reappear. The next morning, I walked into the studio where I'd agreed to give a short recorded interview for a national podcast. Not the viral kind. The kind that stuck. Tempest, the producer said, shaking my hand. We're honored to have you. As I was sitting in the makeup chair, my phone rang. Callista. Again. I hesitated, then answered. Tempest, she said, voice shaky. You need to know. Mom's planning to sue. On what grounds? I asked flatly. She says you forged the will. There was silence on the line. Then I replied, let her try. I have ink, timestamp, and the truth. I ended the call and stepped onto the set. She built a version of our family that suited her. I was about to tell the one that actually existed. The lake was calm that morning, a rare stillness before a storm that, for once, wasn't mine to brace for. I walked along the shoreline, coffee in hand, the wind brushing strands of hair across my face. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Again, 10 missed calls from Amaryllis. 1 text from Callista. She's spiraling. She wants to talk before it's too late. Too late for what? I wasn't sure if it was a warning or a threat. I stopped near a bench, stared out at the water. Part of me wondered what she'd say, what she thought would fix any of this. But that part was quieter now. Not because it gave up, because it stopped hoping. Would it be worth it? Would it change anything? I texted Callista. Tell her I'll meet her. 1 hour. Neutral ground. I picked a small cafe in Oak Park, public enough to avoid theatrics, quiet enough to hear every word. Amaryllis arrived first. Callista trailed behind her, looking tired. Not from emotion, more like PR fatigue. We sat. Amaryllis went in fast. This has gone far enough. I didn't flinch. You've humiliated us, she said. I nodded slowly. You mean I spoke? She blinked. No, you made this mess public. That's not how family works. I folded my hands. You're confusing silence with loyalty. Again. She leaned forward, voice dropping. Do you know how many emails I've had to answer this week? What this is doing to my position on the board? You seem more upset about perception than reality. Callista interjected. Can we not do this here? Amaryllis ignored her. All of this could have been handled inside the family. We would have fixed it. You mean spun it? She sighed loudly. It was just stress, the estate, the planning. You know how things snowball. Still not one word of apology, not even close. Callista reached across the table toward me. Temp, she's trying. I looked at her. No, she's managing. That's different. The check came. I put down cash before anyone else reached. And as I stood, I looked directly at Amaryllis. Her eyes met mine, hard as stone. You didn't want me to exist in that story, and you succeeded. I'm not part of it anymore. I walked out. No slam of the door, no final scream. Just stillness. Some doors stay shut not because they're locked, but because you stop knocking. Back at home, I opened my phone, deleted the last voicemail from my mother. I hesitated for half a second before hitting confirm. Then I unsubscribed from the family newsletter, the one with the curated updates and carefully cropped photos, opened my email, forwarded the estate documentation to Amelia, my lawyer, with a single note, let's finalize everything. Emotionally detaching was less like ripping off a bandage, more like shutting off a valve, one twist at a time. I picked up the phone and called Maya. Hey, she said, cheerful as always. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For showing up, for staying even when they asked you to go. For never asking me to shrink. There was a pause. Then, you finally sound like you're breathing your own air. I smiled. That night, I opened my LinkedIn, updated my bio. Advocate for truth, dignity, and the ones erased too long. Requests had already started coming in. 2 women's leadership summits, 1 resilience conference, and a podcast appearance. None of them asked for my last name. They asked for my story. I pulled out my journal and wrote down the quote I hadn't let myself believe until now. Healing isn't about returning to what hurt you, it's about no longer needing it to prove you survived. Then underneath it, I wasn't built to be their shadow, I was built to cast my own. A knock at the door. I opened it. No one. But a small package sat at the welcome mat. No return address. Inside, an old photograph. Me, around 7 years old, standing between my dad and Maya. I remembered the day he'd let me pick the music in the car, and we danced like idiots in the driveway. On the back of the photo, his handwriting, "You've always been enough, and you always will be." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, holding the proof I no longer needed, but was grateful to have. The studio was smaller than I expected. No big cameras, no lights glaring down on me, just a circular table, 2 microphones, and a soundproof booth that somehow made silence feel thicker. The producer greeted me like an old friend. "Thank you for being here, Tempest. This story will help so many people. Take your time, but take your power too." I nodded. No makeup team, no handlers, just me. I adjusted the mic. The red light turned on. My heart didn't race. Not this time. I took a breath. "I used to whisper my story," I said. "Now I'll let it echo." And I did. I told it all. How the video of my graduation was overwritten. How the celebration was stripped of my name and built around someone else's. How my mother declined a fellowship in my name, with her own email and signature. How she forged a version of my life that didn't include me, and the will, the one with my name written clearly, not buried, not added last minute, the original. I read directly from documents, emails, server logs, metadata. Every line quiet, steady, no anger, just clarity. And when I finished, I closed the folder and looked up. When someone tells you you weren't meant to exist, I said, what they really mean is they're afraid of how brightly you might shine. The episode aired the next day. Within 72 hours, it hit 1 million downloads. The hashtag took off, #IamTempest. But it wasn't just about me. Messages poured in. "Your story gave me words I didn't know I needed." This happened at my retirement party. I spent my whole life being the invisible child. And while all that noise grew, something else started falling apart. Amaryllis was removed from 3 community boards. An investigation into the family trust began. Grant money she'd redirected without consent, paper trails that led to her kitchen drawer, and a personal slush fund disguised as event prep. My lawyer, Amelia, confirmed what I already knew. You have every legal right to reclaim your full share, and more. We filed the paperwork. Within a week, my name was reinstated as the trustee for my father's educational grant fund, the same fund my mother had tried to rename after Callista. Callista, for her part, resigned from a local political campaign. In her press release, she cited personal family conflicts. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel victorious. Just righted. Sometimes the loudest revenge is success served in full daylight. I moved into a new apartment downtown. Big windows, river view, quiet hallways. I hung the photo Maya had returned to me between her and Dad, above my desk. In a brass frame next to it, the handwritten note, "You've always been enough, and you always will be." I started mentoring a young woman named Lila. Smart. Determined. From a family that told her she was too much. She reminded me of myself. Except this time, someone would answer when she knocked. The binder, my archive of erasure, went into a drawer. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't open it again either. The past will always exist, I wrote in my journal, but it doesn't get to control me anymore. On my birthday, I did something radical. I celebrated. No guest list, no photographers, no staged speeches, just me. Coffee, a walk by the lake, a homemade carrot cake. I lit one candle, made no wish, and ate the whole slice without apology. The next week, I stood backstage at a women's leadership conference. The stage manager looked at me, headset in place. "How would you like to be introduced?" I smiled. "Just use my name," I said. "That's more than enough." The music faded. The spotlight found me, and I stepped forward. I didn't steal back the story. I wrote a new one, and this time, my name's on every page.